The students at Roosevelt High called him Mr. Nothing. Not to his face, of course. To his face, he was just Sir, or Hey Janitor, or simply no one at all. He didn't complain, he never did. He swept the halls, mopped the tiles, changed the flickering lights, and sometimes unclogged toilets when the seniors thought it was funny to flush tater tots. He never raised his voice. Not once. Not even when someone threw a slushie at his back in the winter of 2017. He simply wiped it off, rinsed his shirt in the janitor's closet, and returned to cleaning. Most of the teachers didn't know his full name. His badge said W. Grayson. That's all anyone knew. He always clocked in at 6:45 a.m., left at 5 p.m., never stayed a minute later, ate lunch alone. Sometimes sat on the bench in the back parking lot, staring at the horizon as if waiting for something. What no one noticed, what no one ever cared to ask, was what he carried in his eyes. It was the kind of stare you only see in people who've heard things explode far too close. The kind of stare that doesn't blink when someone yells. A stare carved not by age, but by survival. On a Thursday in October, that stare saved 243 lives. The normal morning, Thursday, October 12th, started like any other. Mr. Grayson arrived early. He unlocked the west gate, swept leaves off the walkway, and changed the batteries in the fire exit sensor. A freshman bumped into him near the vending machine and didn't apologize. Grayson didn't mind. He rarely did. At 8:11 a.m., the bell rang. By 8:25, the school was full of noise. Teens shouting, lockers slamming, teachers already exhausted. Mr. Grayson mopped the science wing quietly. On his way back to the closet, he saw a girl crying in the stairwell. Her earbuds dangled from her hoodie. Music still playing. She looked up at him. He didn't speak, just reached into his pocket and handed her a small packet of tissues. He nodded once, walked away. She never forgot that. 9:07 a.m. The front door shattered. Gunfire echoed. Screams. Students scattered like birds startled by thunder. Some froze. Some ran. Most didn't understand, but Grayson did. He was already halfway down the stairs, eyes scanning, brain calculating. 3 men, all black clothing. 2 armed with rifles, one carrying what looked like a pipe bomb. They weren't amateurs, but they weren't professionals either. Their stances were nervous, movements erratic. He moved faster than a man his age should have. He locked the west wing doors, herded a small group of students into the cafeteria freezer, told them quietly, "Don't move, don't speak, no matter what you hear." Then he turned toward the main hallway. At 9:14 a.m., one of the gunmen kicked open the faculty lounge. Grayson was there, mopping, calm. The gunman froze. A teenager, barely 20, mask slipping. "The hell you doing here, old man?" he barked. Grayson didn't flinch. "Cleaning," he said softly. The boy laughed. "You deaf or just stupid?" Grayson stepped forward, slowly, measured. The mop in his hands wasn't just wood and cloth. It was balance, distance, control. Before the boy could raise his weapon, the mop handle was under his chin, then across his neck, and then, thud. He was out cold on the linoleum floor. Grayson exhaled once, then dragged the unconscious body into the janitor's closet and locked the door. From the fallen attacker's belt, Grayson took a cheap walkie-talkie, static. Then a voice. "Unit 3? Status?" Grayson paused, then pressed the button. He slipped. "Wet floor," he said dryly. A pause, then, "Who the hell is this?" Grayson dropped the radio into a trash can full of bleach water. Acting Principal Mahoney watched the security footage from the control room with trembling hands. He saw Grayson take down the intruder. "What the... Who is this guy?" he whispered. Beside him, the school resource officer, recently retired cop, blinked. "I have no damn clue." but he moves like someone who stopped being scared a long time ago. Down in the gym, the other two attackers gathered the PE class as hostages. One shouted into the intercom system, "Everyone stay in your rooms. If anyone tries to play hero, we start shooting." Grayson heard it. He didn't pause. He walked into the gym, unarmed. The taller attacker, a man in his 30s, tattoos down both arms, turned. The hell? Grayson held up his hand, calm. "I'm just the janitor," he said. The man pointed the rifle at him. "You got 5 seconds to turn around." Grayson took another step. "I saw you drop your left elbow when you stepped through the north entrance," he said. "You almost lost control of your rifle. If you keep doing that, you'll dislocate your shoulder before this is over." The man linked. "What?" Grayson nodded at the gun. "Marine issue? Modified stock. But your grip's wrong." Something shifted in the air. The attacker narrowed his eyes. "You military?" Grayson's eyes didn't move. "Not anymore." A long silence, then, "Why the hell are you here?" Grayson looked around. At the students. At the frightened teachers. Then, back at the gunman. "Because I spent a lifetime breaking things," he said. "Now I clean." The gym fell into an eerie silence as the man with the rifle stared down the janitor, who just walked in unarmed. One of the students let out a small whimper. "Sit down," the gunman barked, never taking his eyes off Grayson. But Grayson didn't sit. He stood still, posture relaxed, like a man waiting for the wind to pass. "You're either insane or stupid," the gunman growled. "Neither," Grayson replied. "Just tired." The younger of the two attackers, barely out of his teens, stepped forward nervously. "You want me to take care of him?" he asked. "He's just a janitor." The older man shook his head. "Let him talk." Grayson scanned the hostages. 18 students, 2 teachers. One of the girls had a broken ankle. Her foot was swelling rapidly. "She needs help," Grayson said. "She's not going to make it an hour like that." The gunman sneered. "You a doctor now, too?" "No," Grayson said, "but I've carried enough wounded to know what shock looks like." The man hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, fix her, but don't try anything." Grayson moved slowly, kneeling beside the girl. He spoke gently, eyes never leaving the gunman's reflection in the glossy gym floor. "You'll be okay," he whispered. "Just keep breathing." As he wrapped her ankle with gauze from a nearby first aid kit, he used the opportunity to scan the layout. 1 rifleman, 1 pistol. Back door unsecured. The fire alarm panel was exposed near the bleachers. He filed every detail away. "What's your name?" the younger gunman asked suddenly. "Walter," Grayson said. "Walter Grayson." The older man tensed at the name. His eyes narrowed. "Where did you serve?" "I didn't say I served," Grayson replied. "You didn't have to," the man said. "Only someone who's been through it talks the way you do." Grayson didn't answer. Instead, he slowly rose, dusting off his knees. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You're not murderers. You're scared. And scared men make mistakes." "We don't want your advice, old man," the younger one snapped. "Then stop giving me reasons to talk," Grayson said. His voice was calm, flat, but it hit like a hammer. "What happened to you?" the older attacker asked. "You don't look like a janitor. You look like someone who forgot what peace feels like." Grayson looked up. For the first time, he met the man's eyes directly. "Peace doesn't feel like anything," he said. "It's just the silence after the screaming stops." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the radio on the attacker's belt crackled. "Unit 2? We got a problem. Someone took down Ricky." The man's jaw clenched. He turned to the younger one. "Stay here. I'll check it out." As he left, Grayson made his move. He stepped to the fire alarm panel and pressed the override code, one he'd learned during a security drill the year before. Instantly, The magnetic locks on the side doors clicked open. A subtle beep sounded. No one else noticed, but Grayson did. He turned to the younger gunman, who looked confused. "Something's happening," he said. "I need to find out." Grayson was already moving. He grabbed the mop handle from the corner, swung low, and swept the gunman's legs out from under him. The weapon clattered across the gym floor. Students screamed. Grayson pinned the attacker's arms behind his back and zip-tied his wrists with plastic straps he'd pulled from his belt loop. "Stay down," he said. He turned to the students. "Out the back, now." Some hesitated. One teacher took charge. "You heard him? Move." The students flooded out through the emergency doors. Grayson stayed behind. He picked up the fallen pistol and waited. 10 seconds later, the older gunman returned. He paused in the doorway, seeing the gym empty and his partner unconscious. "I should have known," he muttered. "I should have recognized the eyes." Grayson raised the pistol, but didn't aim. "You still have a choice." The man shook his head slowly. "Number, I don't." He dropped his rifle, pulled off his mask. Grayson froze. It was a face he hadn't seen in 23 years, thinner, angrier, but unmistakable. "Eli," he whispered. The man nodded. "Took you long enough." Grayson's hands trembled. "I thought you were dead." "You left," Eli spat. "You left us and never came back." "I buried your mother alone, and you?" "You vanished." "I didn't vanish," Eli said. "I was discarded." Grayson lowered the pistol. "Eli, I thought I was protecting you. I thought—" "You thought wrong," Eli snapped. "I became what you ran from." "It's not too late," Grayson said. "Let's end this here." "We already have," Eli said. He turned and walked out through the front doors. Grayson didn't follow. Instead, he collapsed onto the floor of the empty gym, breathing heavy, eyes stinging. The sound of sirens finally broke through the walls. Outside the school, police cruisers lined the street with lights spinning red and blue into the morning sky. SWAT vans rumbled into place, officers forming perimeters, rifles drawn. The media vans weren't far behind. Helicopters hovered above, feeding chaos to the news cycle. Inside, Walter Grayson sat alone on the edge of the gym's wooden bleachers, his breathing steady now. Around him, the silence echoed, broken only by the clatter of distant footsteps as first responders entered through cleared wings. But he didn't move. Not yet. He kept his eyes on the entrance Eli had disappeared through. A paramedic tried to approach. "Sir, are you injured?" Grayson shook his head. "Not physically." "Do you know where the suspect is?" the officer asked behind her. Grayson nodded toward the hallway. He walked out, gave up his gun. "His name is Elijah Grayson." The officer blinked. "Related?" Grayson didn't answer. He just stared at the door. Outside, the perimeter commander, Captain Milner, spoke into his radio. "We've got one suspect down, one surrendered. Who the hell is this janitor?" No one had answers. Yet. Back inside, the student who'd twisted her ankle was now in the nurse's care. "He tied it so carefully," she whispered, like he knew exactly how to stop the pain. The news already had its headline. "Janitor stops school siege with a mop." But this story had layers they couldn't guess, memories that stretched back to war zones no one would ask about. The principal entered the gym quietly. His tie was crooked, his eyes wide. "Mr. Grayson?" "I don't know what to say." Grayson stood slowly. "Say less," he replied. "Words don't fix what's broken." "They want to talk to you," the principal said. "The police? Maybe the mayor." "Let them wait," Grayson replied. "There's someone I have to see." Elijah sat in the back of a cruiser, hands cuffed in front of him now. They hadn't put him in the station yet. They weren't sure what to charge him with. He hadn't fired a shot. No one had died. He'd surrendered. But the weapons were real. The fear was real. and the trauma he left behind was undeniable. Walter approached the cruiser. An officer stopped him. "Sir, I'm going to have to—" "He's my son," Grayson said. The officer stepped back. "You've got 5 minutes." Inside the cruiser, Elijah didn't look up as his father opened the door and sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Walter finally said, "I thought you were dead." "For years, I waited for a letter, a call, anything." Elijah stared at the floor. "I was dead. To you, anyway." "You don't believe that," Walter said. "You know why I left." "To protect me?" Elijah scoffed. "Or to avoid seeing what the war did to you?" Walter didn't flinch. "Both." "You don't get to act noble," Elijah said. "You trained me to fight, to survive, and then left me with a mother who couldn't even recognize you by the end." Walter's voice cracked. "She asked for you every day." "And I asked for you," Elijah replied. "Every night." They fell into silence again, the kind that carries years. Finally, Walter said, "What happens now?" Elijah shrugged. "They'll charge me. Probably time served with a plea deal. I didn't hurt anyone." "You broke in with weapons," Walter said. "People were scared." "Yeah," Elijah said. "But it got your attention?" That stopped Walter cold. "All this was for me?" "What do you think, old man?" Elijah said. "The news will call me a terrorist. But I was just trying to bring a ghost back to life." Walter looked out the window. "You didn't have to use violence." "What else would you understand?" Elijah said bitterly. "Peace never changed you. Only war did." Walter stood to leave. "You're wrong. Peace changed me the day I picked up a mop instead of a rifle." "Too little, too late," Elijah muttered. But there was no venom in his tone anymore. That night, Walter returned to his small apartment above the hardware store. It was quiet, as always. He fed his goldfish, opened a box from his closet, and pulled out an old photo, himself in uniform, holding a baby with dark curls. Elijah. The next morning, he went to the station and asked to see the district attorney. "Don't go easy on him," he said. "But don't bury him either. He's already lost too much." The DA looked at him skeptically. "He scared the city half to death. And I failed him long before that," Walter said. The next week, Elijah pled guilty to reckless endangerment and unlawful entry with a deadly weapon. But the court considered his lack of violence, his mental health reports, and the statement made by Walter Grayson. He was sentenced to 18 months in a correctional program with intensive counseling and veteran family reconciliation services. Walter visited every Thursday. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they remembered. Spring arrived slowly that year. The flowers along Roosevelt High's east wall bloomed shyly, as if unsure whether the world had earned their beauty again. Walter Grayson still arrived at 6:45 a.m. sharp. He still swept the hallways, still mopped the cafeteria, still changed the light bulbs. But something had changed. Not in how he worked, but in how people looked at him. Students no longer passed him without a word. They said, "Good morning," sometimes even, "Thank you." A few asked him about the mop handle story. He never answered directly. "Just doing my job," he'd say. But inside, something long frozen had begun to thaw. In the teacher's lounge, staff talked about him in hushed admiration. The district offered him a medal. He declined. A journalist called twice. He hung up. "I didn't do it for a headline," he told the principal. "I did it because no one else was going to." Every Thursday afternoon, Walter took the 2:10 p.m. bus to the correctional center. He brought sandwiches, sat across the plastic table from Elijah, and ate quietly. Sometimes they talked about the past. Sometimes they sat in silence. One day Elijah asked, "Why'd you start working at a school?" Walter chewed his sandwich before answering. I wanted to be around kids. I thought maybe if I saw enough of them smiling, it'd balance out what I saw over there. Elijah didn't respond, but something in his posture softened. The next week, Walter brought an old photo album. Inside were pictures Elijah had never seen, of his mother laughing in the rain, of a young Walter holding him in the hospital, of a birthday cake shaped like a tank. They sat for hours flipping through them. On the way out, Elijah said, "I don't hate you anymore." Walter nodded. "That's enough for now." 6 months later, Elijah was released under supervision. He didn't return to the city. Instead, he moved to a small town an hour away, started working at a mechanic's shop. Walter visited when he could. They didn't talk about the siege. They talked about carburetors, sandwiches, and weather. One day, Elijah said, "You ever think about retiring?" Walter laughed for the first time in years. Who else is going to mop those floors right? But that night, he thought seriously, for the first time, about letting go. The following year, Roosevelt High dedicated a small plaque near the gym doors. It read, "To those who keep us safe without ever raising their voice." Students walked by it every day. Most didn't notice, but some did. And for those few, it meant everything. On his final day at work, Walter arrived early. He mopped the gym one last time. He checked the lights. Then he sat on the bench by the parking lot, the one where he used to eat alone, and waited for the sun to rise. A freshman approached, holding a crumpled paper. "Mr. Grayson, can you help me fix this science project?" Walter smiled. "Let's take a look." They worked together for 20 minutes. When the student thanked him, Walter said simply, "Take care of your school and each other." Then he walked home. No applause, no speeches. Just the quiet of a man who had seen too much, lost too much, and still chose to serve. At home, he placed his badge on the shelf beside his mop handle, and beside it a photo of his son smiling again. The world would never know the full story, but for those who did, it would never be forgotten.